The driveway looked like a billionaire's showroom. Bentleys, Lumbos, and wagons stretched bumper to bumper across my private property. Police lights were flashing. One of the guests was sobbing into a diamond-studded phone. Another was screaming that his Bugatti wasn't even scratched like that this morning. And there I was, standing calmly at the top of my porch, holding a gavel in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here. Why, I just auctioned off 58 luxury vehicles right from my own damn driveway. And why the HOA president was getting cuffed in the background, still wearing her silk robe and screaming about her diplomatic immunity. Well, buckle in. It started with a glossy postcard wedged into my wrought iron mailbox. You're invited, it screamed in shimmering gold letters. Beneath it, smaller font explained, Riverbend Ho, Charity Gala. An elegant evening of music, wine, and giving back. No date. No address, no RSVP form, just a QR code and a watermark of the community's gaudy logo. A fake swan floating over a clip art pond. I dismissed it as just another HOA vanity project, the kind of midlife spectacle Karen Hallwell, the board president, dreamed up between Botox appointments and power walks. I wasn't interested. I kept my distance from the HOA, and they returned the favor. Mostly, I paid my dues, kept my hedges trimmed, and lived at the far edge of the neighborhood where the rules stopped reaching and the roads turned private. My house sat on a 3-acre plot just outside the official HOA boundaries, grandfathered in under a zoning technicality and protected by an easement nobody at the HOA office seemed illiterate enough to interpret. Still, I figured the postcard was a harmless mistake. I didn't scan the code. I didn't ask questions. And that, I admit, now was my first tactical error. The second came the following Saturday when I returned from a weekend hike upstate and turned onto my driveway only to see it had been invaded. At first, I thought there had been a robbery or a film shoot, maybe a music video. 60. No, 58. I counted them later. Luxury cars lined every inch of my paved circular drive. We're talking matte black Lamborghinis, cherry red Ferraris, a Rolls-Royce, Cullinan with gold accents, even a damn Koenigsegg parked half over my lawn like it was entitled to ruin the Bermuda grass. People were everywhere. Tuxedos, gowns, sparkling heels clacking across flagstones I imported from Verona. There were valet attendants with matching gloves, a champagne tower stationed on the side porch, and a DJ set up thumping deep house music that shook the windows of my library. I parked down the road, hiked back up with my bag over my shoulder, and stood there for a full minute watching a drunk man in a velvet tracksuit do donuts in a McLaren across the very place I normally drink my morning coffee. He waved at me. I did not wave back. I walked up the steps and found a pair of folding signs staked into the front lawn. Overflow Gala. Parking sponsored by Riverbend Ho. One, read with my address handwritten in Sharpie. The other listed valet instructions and an emergency contact number not mine. I stepped inside and found strangers had been in my house. The foyer was draped in twinkle lights. My coat closet door hung open, rated for hangers. One of the guest bathrooms had a printed sign on it. VIP use only. Reserved. The nerve, the absolute delusion. I heard someone giggling in the kitchen and found a woman in a rhinestone headband and stiletto heels, pouring white wine from my personal stash into party cups, humming along to the music like she owned the place. Oh. Hi, she chirped. Sorry, is this your house? Karen said we could use the fridge. Then she offered me a plastic cup like that was going to fix anything. I took it, drank it, smiled. Because, while my pulse was spiking like a RTR scale, my face stayed flat as stone. That's when I saw her, Karen, standing on my back deck under a white canopy, posing for a photo with some man in a fake military uniform. Her heels were planted right on top of the koi mosaic I had custom-laid last spring, the one that cost more than her leased Mercedes. There's the man of the hour. She squealed when she saw me lifting her glass and walking over like this was Some surprise birthday party and not a felony trespassing incident. I hope you don't mind. We had a last-minute venue issue with the country club and your home is just so accommodating. I knew you wouldn't mind. You're always so quiet and generous living all the way out here with all this space. I said nothing, just looked at her over the rim of my stolen wine and listened. Besides, she went on, lowering her voice like we were old friends. Your driveway is literally perfect. It's practically made for Rolls Royces. You should really rent it out more often. That's when the power went out. Apparently, the third industrial espresso machine they'd plugged into my poolside outlets had tripped the breaker. Screaming ensued. A shriek from the photo booth tent. Laughter from the rear hedge where someone was lighting a cigar next to my dry brush pile. Can someone call Javier? Karen shouted into the crowd. Tell him to bring a backup generator. I stood there calmly watching her unravel while, behind my back, my hands slowly clicked the record button on my phone. Because I wasn't just a quiet man. I was a meticulous man. And what I lacked in HOA social capital, I made up for in documentation, contracts, property law, knowledge, and a deep patient love for poetic revenge. That night, after they left, after the final Maserati peeled off my gravel like it was a racetrack, and the last string of fairy lights dangled half-lit from my gutters, I walked the perimeter and took inventory. 12 broken landscaping lights, 3 flattened garden beds, 2 patio chairs. Missing, an open bottle of champagne floating in my koi pond. My driveway was strewn with tire marks, oil puddles, and someone's half-eaten shuttery plate. I didn't call the police. I didn't confront Karen. I didn't even file a noise complaint. Not yet. Instead, I went inside, poured myself a real drink, and opened a clean leather-bound notebook. On the cover, I wrote one word, in bold ink, evidence. Then, I began listing names, timestamps, license plates, and infractions. I downloaded security footage. I logged Instagram posts. There were dozens hashtags like Riverbend Royalty, Goggles, Borrowed, Estate. I followed Karen's guest list like it was a puzzle made just for me, because I already knew this wasn't over. Not even close. No, this was just the opening act. The HOA had just declared war on the wrong man, and I wasn't about to fight back with noise. I was going to fight back with strategy, silence, and statutes. They thought I was some reclusive bachelor with a pretty house and no fight in me. They didn't realize I was something far worse for them. A man with patience, legal leverage, and a locked cabinet full of surprises. Let them toast their success. Let them laugh. Let them leak caviar into the cracks of my pavers because I wasn't just going to get even. I was going to turn their little party into the most expensive mistake they'd ever made. The first thread unraveled on Sunday morning. I was sipping coffee from my porch, the same porch that still smelled faintly of champagne and cigarette ash. When I pulled up the Riverbend HOA's website, it was sleek, professional, and more modern than any neighborhood committee had a right to be. They had a donation page for their so-called charity initiatives, a photo gallery from the previous night's gala already uploaded, and a blurb that caught my eye. All proceeds benefit the Fair Horizons Foundation, improving community access to educational equity and public wellness. I'd never heard of it, and I make it my business to know fake charities. The name riot of boardroom buzzwords and 501 3-cover stories. So I did what I do best. I dug. The IRS has a searchable database for tax-exempt organizations. I typed in Fair Horizons Foundation. No match. Tried every combination. Nothing. No EIN. No filing status. No annual reports. No form 990s. That wasn't just unusual, it was illegal. If they were accepting donations and claiming tax-deductible status without a legitimate registration, they weren't just disorganized. They were laundering money. I copied the address listed on the gala invite, 212 Palmwood Boulevard, Suite 14. Google Maps showed a UPS Drop box inside a strip mall nail salon. Perfect. A fake charity with AP. Oh. Box front. Classic shell move. I leaned back in my chair, took another sip, and let the full weight of it settle in. This wasn't a party gone wrong. This wasn't just HOA incompetence. This was something bigger, sloppier, and potentially federal. The gala, the cars, the coordinated silence. It all reeked of people with too much money and too much to hide. I opened a second browser, tab and ran names from the Instagram posts I'd saved. One man, Robert Mancini, tagged himself in front of my koi pond holding a cigar and a champagne flute. His caption read, "Don't ask what I paid. Just know I didn't park it on grass." He was leaning against a Maybach. His account was public. I traced him through LinkedIn, executive partner at Echelon Quantitative, a hedge fund operating out of New York and the Cayman Islands. I ran him through FINRA's broker check. His license had been suspended 6 weeks ago. Curious, I checked the SEC's enforcement database. Boom. Manini was under formal investigation for market manipulation. I flagged it. That's one. Next, I searched. A woman named Sienna Krell tagged in a dozen shots with Karen and her husband near my front gates. Her dress alone was worth more than most mortgages. She ran a nonprofit consulting firm out of Miami. Only her name appeared in 3 different LLCs across Florida, Delaware, and Nevada. The one in Delaware was tied to a shell company that had recently purchased a strip of foreclosed homes at auction only to resell them days later at a 500% markup to a community revitalization trust. The trust, by the way, had no physical address, just a P.O. box. Different box. Same nail salon. That's 2. And then there was Karen's husband, Douglas Hallwell, the quiet one. The man with the clipboard who spent most of the party lurking near the valet stand and whispering into his phone. His real estate firm, Well Property Group, had recently donated a $200 check to the Fair Horizons Foundation, publicly disclosed at the gala, complete with a big cardboard check and photo op. I found the same amount listed as a grant on a local HOA improvement report routed through a shadowy construction firm that didn't have a website but did have one. Client, Hallwell Property Group. That's 3. At this point, I wasn't surprised. I was irritated. They weren't even trying to hide it. No layers, no offshore mazes, just half-baked laundering through an HOA's fake charity gala on my private property in front of security cameras under a damn disco ball. If this had been my case 6 months ago, I'd have kicked in their doors already. But I wasn't on the clock. Not officially. Not anymore. Which brings me to the part one hadn't told you yet. See, most folks around here think I'm just a rich recluse with a taste for silence and imported espresso. But before I moved into this mansion and installed biometric locks on every floor, I was something else. A senior forensic auditor for the Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinAnson, which means while Karen was decorating my koi pond with party streamers and renting out my guest house to influencers, she was staging a federal crime scene on the front lawn of a man who'd spent 15 years dismantling embezzlement networks from the inside out. And I was on sabbatical, which meant I had time. So I picked up the phone and made a quiet call to someone who owed me favors, Janet Ross, Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Financial Crimes Division. I told her what I found. The false charity, the real estate loop, the party, the luxury cars, the Instagram tags. I offered to send over a preliminary dossier. Only if you want to. Laugh, I said. It's amateur hour over here. She didn't laugh. Give me 2 days, she said. We'll run it through the filters. Meanwhile, I kept pulling threads. The HOA's financial disclosures were required to be public. I requested them under the Sunshine Act. Karen delayed for 2 days, citing record consolidation issues. When the PDF finally arrived, it was a mess of redactions and missing pages, but not missing enough. I found 5 community Outreach payments each made out to vendors with no business registration in the state. One was for 180, a community beautification grant. I cross-referenced the address. It was the warehouse where they stored furniture for the gala. Furniture that was rented under a different name and paid for by a credit card belonging to Karen's niece, who, by the way, lives in Tulum and hasn't filed taxes in 3 years. That's 4. At this point, my quiet investigation had turned into a full-blown web of what we call structural laundering, using fake improvements, shell vendors, and overvalued contracts to wash money through institutions that don't usually raise red flags: HOAs, religious nonprofits, youth sports leagues. Anything that seems too small, too local, too beneath the scope of federal attention. But when you've seen what I've seen, men hiding drug money in bake sale accounts, women pushing millions through food banks that didn't exist, you start recognizing the smell. And Riverbend stank. I sent everything to Janet. She confirmed what I suspected. Mancini's accounts had already been flagged for irregular transfers linked to charitable disbursements. Hallwell's firm was on a watch list for suspicious real estate swaps. And Sienna Krell, she was already named in a sealed indictment related to nonprofit fraud. The Fair Horizons Foundation was just the latest nameplate on a carousel of laundering fronts. Janet told me to keep watching, keep collecting. An indictment was coming, but she needed it airtight. So I did what I do best. I sharpened the blade. I logged every transfer I could access. I traced IP addresses from Karen's emails. I cataloged party attendees and cross-referenced them against donation records. I submitted a request to the state's attorney general for a formal audit of Riverbend's HOA expenditures using a burner legal address I'd set up 3 years ago for a case in Idaho. I filed it anonymously. Of course, let Karen guess. But what really pushed me over the edge wasn't the money. It wasn't even the fraud. It was the arrogance. The way they strutted on my land like they were royalty. The way they smiled in the photographs. The way Karen in her sequin gown and glowing perfume looked me in the eye and said, "Your house is perfect for events like this." Like I was the venue. Like I was furniture, a convenience. I was done being quiet because now I didn't just have circumstantial evidence. I had footage. Karen accepting a check. Mancini snorting something off the back of his Rolex. Behind the hydrangeas. Hallwell signing a document while standing on the hood of a Bentley. A video of Sienna clinking glasses and whispering, "This place is safe. Nobody here knows anything wrong." Again, Sienna. Someone knew everything. So I started planning something else. Not a raid, not a take-home, something quieter, more poetic, a reversal of fortune disguised as compliance. Because the funny thing about abandoned property laws and lien rights in our county, they're shockingly clear. If you park a car on someone's private land, leave it unattended without express permission, and fail to respond to official notice, within 72 hours, that vehicle is considered abandoned, and the property owner, they're legally entitled to dispose of it or auction it, especially if there's posted signage, especially if there's proof. And I had plenty of proof. 58 luxury vehicles, 58 names, 58 people too arrogant to think they'd ever be held accountable. It was time to teach them otherwise. They say revenge is best served cold, but I preferred mine legally laminated and notarized. After weeks of surveillance, research, and a long line of polite conversations with just the right bureaucrats, it was time to bait the trap. The beauty of a sting isn't just in the execution. It's in the pretense of kindness. So, I played it smart. I played it neighborly. And I played it loud enough for Karen to hear through her third-floor sunroom. I sent the invitations on Tuesday, hand-delivered with thick cardstock and a wax seal I custom-ordered online just for effect. Riverbend Recovery Night, a community affair. The tagline read, "Celebrating unity, privacy, and progress." I wrote it in the same empty marketing tone Karen used in every HOA newsletter. A cleanup gala, a second Chance swear, a goodwill offering from the host who had been so graciously volunteered last time. Karen bit. Immediately, she replied within the hour, CCing the entire HOA board, thanking me for my community spirit and offering to coordinate guest parking. Again, I told her not to worry. I had it covered this time. Please encourage attendees to use the same driveway entrance and leave their vehicles in the marked guest zones. Overnight parking is welcomed and appreciated. That part was important, legally vital, actually, because you see, I'd spent the last week filing paperwork with the county clerk's office. Quiet paperwork, the kind that takes time to process, but once filed, grants you certain rights like temporary private auction registration, event security clearance, and most importantly, signage approval. I posted the signs 2 days before the party. Reflective metal bolted into forks first, spaced every 15 foot down my driveway. Warning. Vehicles left unattended beyond 24 hours may be considered abandoned. Property under code 13.7a. Owner assumes no liability. I also put up another larger sign at the end of the drive. Private event zone. Entry constitutes agreement to temporary storage contract under ordinance 22.9c. I laminated everything. I documented everything. Then I backed it all up to 3 cloud drives and an external SSD that stayed locked in a fireproof safe under my bed. And just to be sure, I called my lawyer, not my friend at the U.S. Attorney's Office. A different one, a more local breed. Nate Keating, civil litigation junkyard dog, with a jaw full of obscure zoning law and the personality of a fax machine. Nate reviewed everything twice. He looked at the signs, the filings, the event registry, even the party permit I'd requested from the county under a corporate LLC I formed 3 years ago as part of a separate investigation. You're technically bulletproof, he said after a long pause. Ethically, you're about as warm as a snake's belly. But yeah, this will hold. Good. Saturday arrived with sun and humidity, and just enough summer smugness to make the whole plan feel cinematic. I wore the same suit I used to wear to wiretap warrant hearings. Charcoal pressed, pocket square tucked with surgical precision. I greeted guests at the front gates like a hotel concierge, smiling and nodding and handing out branded lanyards I had made with the HOA logo in raised foil. I told people they could leave their keys with the valet, a real valet. This time, when I hired through a bonded company with strict camera protocol and a stack of waivers. Everything recorded, everything timestamped. By 8 p.m., my property looked like a dealership for the criminally overcompensated Bentleys, Maseratis, a pair of mirror-wrapped G-wagons that reflected the string lights like rotating disco balls. Karen wore a glittery caplet and a forced smile, fluttering around like she was the hostess again. Douglas hung near the bar, sweating through his collar. I pretended not to notice either of them. Instead, I focused on small talk. I smiled. I served, and I told them exactly what they wanted to hear. Stay as long as you like. Park wherever. Overnights. No issue. We're all friends here. It was all recorded. Every sentence. I had 3 wireless mics hidden in planters, a facial recognition camera mounted in a fake outdoor speaker, drones doing slow sweeps from the tree, and I had plate scans, voice logs, and vehicle inventories uploaded in real time to a read-only server managed by a buddy in municipal IT. By midnight, nearly every guest had left their car on the property and taken a town car home. Half of them didn't even ask. A few waved at me, drunk and barefoot, promising to swing. By Monday, perfect. Sunday morning came. The sun rose. The driveway glittered with dew on carbon fiber and gold trim. I walked the length of the lot with a clipboard and a body cam. I counted 55 vehicles. 3 had already been towed. I left notices on each remaining. Windshield printed in bold font on firm legal stock. Notice of intent to file. Abandoned vehicle claim under Civil Code 13.7a. This vehicle has been left unattended on private property in violation of posted signage and local ordinance. The property owner has documented your entry, usage, and vehicle abandonment. Failure to remove the vehicle within 48 hours will result in a formal lien and auction notice being filed with the county clerk. Riverbend Reserve LLC Registered Private Event Storage Operator Certificate 77-114B. I posted copies to the HOA message board. I emailed Karen CCing the HOA list. I uploaded it to the HOA's public site under a community events recap banner. Then I waited. Karen called me Sunday afternoon in full screech. This is insane, she hissed. You're threatening legal action over a neighborhood party. I told her calmly that I wasn't threatening anything. I was enforcing a posted ordinance. Her guests had left property on my land. She had encouraged it. That made her complicit in what the county recognized as an illegal dumping of assets. You're calling luxury cars trash, she barked. No, I replied. I'm calling them unclaimed property. She hung up. Monday afternoon, I filed the liens. Tuesday morning, the sheriff called. Deputy Willard knew me. I'd helped them bust a real estate laundering ring 2 years ago. He chuckled when he saw the file. You really dotted every I, huh? I nodded. I even used Helvetica, the fancy version. He showed up on my property with 2 patrol cars, a city clerk, and a tow company that owed me a favor. I walked them through the files, the timestamps, the video evidence, and the sign postings. By 10 a.m., we had traffic cones set up in 2 auctioneer reps taking VIN numbers. The first owner showed up just before noon, a 20-some designer loafers who looked like he just found out he wasn't rich enough to be above the law. You can't sell my Aventador, he screamed. My father owns a yacht in Monaco. I handed him the abandonment paperwork. Tell him to dock it here. Maybe we'll auction that too. He tried to call Karen. Karen didn't answer. By sundown, nearly a dozen vehicles had been hauled off. The rest had claims pending. The sheriff stayed for most of it. Karen did eventually arrive. All fire and perfume and indignation, threatening lawsuits. Public scandal, ruined reputations. I calmly handed her a notarized packet of her own. It included photographic proof of her authorization to use my property, documented confirmation that I had granted conditional access, and detailed footage of her encouraging guests to park wherever they like on camera. You were hosting, Karen, I told her. I was just recording. Is this extortion? She spat. Is that what this is? No, I said, smiling thinly. This is a lien enforcement auction under Code 13.7a. The law is on my side. You are too. She sputtered. The sheriff stepped forward and said plainly, ma'am, unless you're here to remove your property, I suggest you step back. You're interfering with a legal recovery operation. Karen went quiet. Douglas tried to speak, but the tow truck's engine drowned him out. He watched, deflated, as their matching Range Rovers were hooked and dragged away like toys. That night, my driveway was empty again. The sign still stood, the cameras still rolled, and in my garage, I printed one last set of documents, the checklists for tomorrow's auction. I filed one with the clerk's office, one with the sheriff, one with my lawyer. The rest I pinned to the inside of my front door, just below the new sign that read, "Vehicles left here will be sold. No exceptions, no warnings, no Karen." The trap had worked, and I was just getting started. Wednesday morning dawned with the scent of gunmetal rain and justice in the air. I stood on my porch sipping dark roast from a mug that said, "Tax fraud isn't victimless," watching the first batch of buyers pull in through the main gates. Every inch of my 3-acre driveway had been transformed into an impound lot/bidding floor, 60 feet of velvet rope, an awning tent with folding tables, a podium made from the stump of the oak Karen made the HOA cut down last year and parked in perfect rows, lined bumper to bumper like a billionaire's yard sale, were 58 of the finest, gaudiest, most illegally parked vehicles ever seized under Civil Code. 1. Know your legal rights and responsibilities. You don't need to be a former Treasury agent to protect your own property. The law is a tool, not a weapon. And the one who knows how to use it doesn't need to shout. Only file the right forms. Never sign anything you haven't read. And remember, a small sign on your lawn can be more powerful than a Bentley if used correctly. 2. Never underestimate silence. The quietest person in the room is often the one taking notes. Being polite doesn't mean being weak. Kindness doesn't mean being easy to exploit. Stay respectful, but don't let anyone mistake you for the furniture in your own house. 3. True power doesn't come from the chair you sit in, but from the ground you stand on. Whether you're a resident, an office worker, or a retired financial investigator, if you know the law, have documentation, and are patient, the entire system can be forced to listen to you. 4. If you see something wrong, don't pretend you didn't. Money laundering schemes, financial fraud, and abuses of power often start with seemingly small things: a secretive party, an unverified name, a charity fund with no tax filings. But silence is the soil where wrongdoing grows. Speak up. Dig deeper. 5. And finally, the best revenge comes with legal documentation. No need to pound tables, just file paperwork. Don't dream of revenge in shouting matches. Do it through notarized documents, recorded evidence, and Helvetica font. In short, don't let someone else's arrogance make you forget that you have rights, a voice, and most importantly, records. If you play by the rules, especially the ones no one else bothers to read, you'll always hold the upper hand.